Welcome to another conversation with the Apostate Sisters. I'm Patty and I make this podcast with my sister Nancy. We grew up in a doomsday cult called the Worldwide Church of God. We are also nerdy about history and culture, but we're critical of religion. So get ready to get mad or to nod your head in agreement as we talk about today's topic. Today, we're talking about why it is that siblings raised in the same home by the same parents, going to the same church, maybe even going to the same schools, end up on opposite ends of the belief spectrum. This episode was suggested by David, friend of the show. Check out his interview on our channel. David grew up in the Worldwide Church of God, as of course, so did his siblings. So he's found himself confused as to how it was that they ended up in such different places as grown-ups. David is an atheist, and yet he has siblings who are still following the teachings of the Worldwide Church of God. If you're someone who's enjoying our episodes and wants to hear more of these conversations, head on over to Patreon, where you can become one of our sinful siblings. If Patreon isn't your thing, hold tight. Channel memberships are on the way. But also, liking, subscribing, commenting, and sharing this episode will all help our channel as well. Every little thing helps build this community, and we appreciate your support. Now, back to today's topic. Hello there, David.
Hi, David. Welcome
Hello,
back.
Patty. Hello, Nancy.
Thank you so much for reaching out with this idea for an episode. We're so excited to get to talk through it with you. You're basically a pioneer of our interview series, so it's so cool that you're back here now for a podcast episode. I love it.
Right. And this time I'm on camera.
Right. Yeah, that's great.
And for your viewers' sake, just so you know, I'm not trying to give everybody the cold shoulder. It's just I've got my wheelchair tilted back a bit so I can relax while we're talking. And if I go straight on to the camera, it's not very comfortable in my wheelchair. So
You're good, David.
All good.
you got me at an angle here.
All good. We want ultimate comfort for our guests, for sure.
You look good, David. It looks like things are going great. You're not inhaling too many toxic fumes out there in California, are you?
I'm probably 50 miles away from the fires.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
There you go. I knew you weren't quite that close. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, good. I
Pretty good
will
out
be in LA this weekend, actually. So
Awesome.
yeah, I'm going to stop by Pasadena and see the old campus where Armstrong used to live. It's going to be a little nostalgic. I'm a little nervous, but kind of excited too.
I'm from the Southern California area. And back in the day, we would leave the area for Feast of Tabernacles. We'd go up to the Tahoe area.
Oh,
yes.
Lake Tahoe.
Right.
Loved it. What a beautiful place. The campus in Pasadena was just a gorgeous campus.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Below what everybody could see was not so gorgeous, but campus was spectacular.
Right. That's a really important distinction, I feel like.
Yeah.
Things going on under the surface, not as pretty as the veneer they put on it all, but
There's a reason.
My parents were not involved in the religion when I was born, but by the time I was age, I think 3.5 or so, they were. So
okay.
I have no memories as a child before being involved with the Worldwide Church of God. So we would go, although we would leave for the Feast of Tabernacles, we would go to the Pasadena campus for the other high holy days and stuff. And I remember they used to hold the services in they held it in the gymnasium initially. And then they built that auditorium, the Ambassador Auditorium, which is another spectacular building. And I can't imagine how much it must have cost a fortune to build because it was state of the art at the time. But so the whole family, we would go up to Pasadena and get regularly indoctrinated for those high holy days. And so my whole family was raised from not my parents obviously, but my siblings, we were all from a very young age raised in the church. My sister, by the time she was born, my parents were already involved in the church. So she was born into it.
How many siblings do you have?
I have two older brothers and a younger sister.
Okay. Oh,
Yeah.
all right.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, I mean, I wasn't born into it, but I was indoctrinated from day one.
Yeah. Sure.
So, I mean, that I can remember of all my memories. And so I have all those memories of going to church every Saturday and having Bible studies on, I think it was like Wednesday nights, and on the high holy days going up to the Pasadena campus for services. And so I was thoroughly indoctrinated from very young. And I think when I was I guess about age 17, I moved out from living with my mother. And I think that's
Oh.
really when I kind of started breaking away from the Worldwide Church of God. And I became what they would call very worldly. And well,
Um,
that's when I started having fun and enjoying things, actually.
David, my
Aw.
story is very similar to that. I got away from my family at 17. Well, they just kind of left me to my own devices. But yeah, then I got very worldly at that point as well. So yeah, 17 was the age.
Yeah.
Mm.
And I left to Florida as soon as I turned 18, where I really started having fun and had some great times
I'm
and stuff
sure.
like that. So by the time I got back to California in my early 20s, I was, fully broken away from the church, as were both of my older brothers. But my mother and my sister were still, and at that time, my sister was in her late teens, so she was still living with mom, and so they were still fully enmeshed in it. And then I think I kind of like, if anybody had asked me if I believed in God, I would have said yes.
Hmm.
And, but I don't think I was really committed or anything. And I mean, I wasn't going to church or anything like that. And I could echo back all of the talking points that I was indoctrinated with, in all the years that I was going to church and stuff. And then I broke my neck at age 26. That's when I became quadriplegic.
Hmm.
And I
20.
never really thought much about God or anything in the involvement with that. So I had a um, a girlfriend after I broke my neck. She was religious, and I mean, I guess I kind of like went along with believing in God then. But I think when I finally uh, was sure that I didn't believe in God was when I started going to college and getting in higher education and studying, like evolution and biology and astronomy and really getting to really understand the world better. And I started realizing, no, I don't believe in God. And it wasn't really like a flip of a switch or anything. It was sort of a slow transition. And I guess I just finally got to a point where I realized, no, I'm not a believer. And then looking back, I'm not so sure that I ever was fully committed or bought in. I was probably just going through the motions,
Like
out of
culturally,
it being easy.
Mhm.
like
Yeah.
kind of just part of the culture versus like a
Yeah,
deep held belief type thing.
exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
I mean, I was fully indoctrinated,
Yeah.
Sure.
you know.
What else was there? I mean, yeah, it starts to
Yes.
crumble.
Yes. It was
Yeah.
my whole life until age 17.
Yeah, I
Well,
think the same way, David. Yeah, I don't think I ever truly believed. Sure, I may have said that I believed it in God at one point because I had evangelicals all around me, but did I ever really? I don't think so. Again, it's just indoctrination. You kind of regurgitate things that you're taught at a young age, and when you're told, well, there's no other option, like atheism's not a thing.
exactly.
What else do you
Well,
have to go off of?
that's what I was noticing about what you were just saying there, David, is that it seems like it shifted for you as soon as you weren't in the like constant putting in of new indoctrination. Like you got
Mm-hmm.
away from it and then you looked at alternative ways of seeing the world through science and that sort of thing.
And
I see, I
partying.
mean, and partying.
Having
I
fun.
mean, it
Yes.
seems like we're already hitting upon some things that we may decide in our conclusion to this are big factors in how people end up staying the course of their indoctrination or veering off into worldly things, right?
Well,
Hmm.
it's interesting listening to you ladies for the past year or so. I kind of felt like I kind of followed a path kind of similar to Nancy's
I think
in
so.
some ways.
Yeah.
Probably more similar to Nancy's than to yours, Patty. But because I some of the things that Nancy said over the years kind of rung true with me too.
Yeah. I think you were taught to hate this world, that it's evil, the people in it are evil, and those are the other people. You don't want anything to do with them. But then once you got out there, David, you're like, hey, this is fucking great. I'm enjoying myself. I love everything about it. And when you start to question everything else, you're like, maybe God isn't real. Maybe I have just been fed bullshit my whole life. Why did they do that?
And then interesting thing is my oldest brother, he kind of took the same path as me early on.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
As became very worldly as he hit his late teens. And we did a lot of really worldly stuff and good times. Like my older brother and I, we were in a band together. We were in a cover band, and had all that fun involved with that. And we were rooming together for many years and stuff. And he kind of followed the same path that I did for a while. But then I think it was probably about 15 years ago, maybe 20, somewhere in that range, he started going back into now, of course, by this time, 15 years ago, the Worldwide Church of God was really not in existence, certainly not as the same sort of church. But what happened was, well, let me mention for a second about my sister and my mother. Well, my father was disfellowshipped.
Ooh,
I remember that.
Probably almost half a century ago.
right.
So it was him getting away from it was sort of an easy thing. I was forced, I guess, and maybe not. I shouldn't say an easy thing. It was forced on him, and because he was a big believer too. He was really devout, and
Did
he
he?
was kind of forced out, and he has since
Okay.
passed away.
What was
But
his belief like after he was forced out? Did he maintain his belief although they kicked him?
I think essentially maybe. He stopped. He didn't. No, I guess. He didn't continue to celebrate the holy days and stuff like that,
Okay.
and the Sabbath. So I
Mm.
guess no, really.
All right.
But he would have always said that he believed in God. My
Holy.
mother, on the other hand, she has been completely involved in it to this day. And as the Worldwide Church of God, she didn't leave the Worldwide Church of God. The Worldwide Church of God left her.
Yep.
Ah, that's what we say too,
What did
actually.
we
But yeah, I
say?
get
Right.
you.
So as the Worldwide Church of God changed and all that stuff went on, she stayed in the same sort of like what I would call Messianic Jewish beliefs, in that she continues to follow all those same holidays that we did in the Worldwide Church of God, which are essentially Jewish holidays by
Yes.
slightly different names, but they're Jewish holidays, and does not celebrate. She still believes that Christmas and Easter and all those are pagan holidays and does not get involved in that. And what they do now, because the Worldwide Church of God is essentially defunct, is they have personal fellowships. So they have, even to this day, my mother is living with my sister now, and they have a big home, and they have I think like 40, 50 people get together every Sabbath in their home, and they study the Bible and they worship and they praise the Lord and they sing and dance and all that stuff. And they still celebrate the Feast of Tabernacles, although now they call it something like Sukkot or something like that. Sukkot.
I'm sorry. Why is that so funny? Just the way
That's why
you
I
say it.
spelled
I'm
it
like,
for you. Um, and they do that, and they do all the, the Day of Atonement and Passover, and so they're essentially still the same Jewish holidays, but by different names.
Sure.
And but they do believe that Jesus Christ is the Messiah and the Lord and Savior. So their beliefs have not changed a bit in the 60 years that my mother has been involved in it, and my sister. She's
So-
almost 60, and so they haven't changed. And so they have fellowships at their home, and they find a surprisingly large group of people
Yeah.
to join them.
Must be a pretty big house if they're fitting 50 people in their house every week
It is.
too.
It's a big house, and she, my sister has 7 kids of her own, and there's interesting stories about how they have gone different ways as well. So, but anyway, I brought that up to give some context to my brother, my oldest brother. He about 15 years ago or so, he started getting back into that whole thing, and he started going to the fellowships with my sister and my mother, and he's like fully back in now. He's a really staunch believer now.
What caused him to go
Are
back?
you? I know. I'm like, are you ever like, hey, brother, remember that night in Orlando when we whatever?
Well, he didn't go to
He's like,
Florida.
no,
with
I
me,
don't
but-
remember.
Oh,
But there were nights here in Southern California that I could have. No, I never did, and I'm not sure. I'm not sure why he went back.
yeah.
Maybe he just, at the core of himself, he held on to those beliefs. Whereas at
I
the
mean, he
core of
was-
myself, I never did.
There
Yeah.
you go. Well,
Yeah.
that's an interesting point too. So, I mean, you're saying he was in his 50s, right?
Yes.
If it's your older
Or-
brother and I'm doing the
Or
math
late
right.
40s at least.
Yeah. Okay. I mean,
Yeah, he
are we
was-
talking like we're just at a aware of your own mortality moment? Like, oh, I'm closing in on 50. Like maybe I need to pay attention to my eternal hereafter. I don't know.
That
I
or
feel like
it's-
some people do it for that reason.
He's never mentioned that.
Or is he real close to your mother and maybe she
Well,
influenced
yeah,
him? I don't
and
know.
so am I.
Okay.
Oh, good.
I'm super close to my mother.
hmm
That's nice.
We're a very close family, all of us, to this day.
Good.
So I've had that, fortunately, and in spite of our different religious beliefs, we're very close.
That's
Yeah,
good.
okay.
And I talk to her like, every other day,
Oh, wow.
even though she no longer lives in Southern California. I used to see her a lot when she lived here, but she's moved away out of state. So we're very close, but he's very close with my mother as well. Yeah, there's no difference there.
Fascinating.
Yeah, it's interesting. And my sister, like I said, she was born into it, and she's still in it. I mean, completely enmeshed.
Yeah. So there was 4 of you. Brother,
Right.
brother, sister.
Middle brother, didn't mention
Yeah.
him yet.
Okay.
So what happened with him? About the same age. Actually, I was living with my mother, as were both of my brothers and my sister, until about my 17th birthday. And shortly after my 17th birthday, me and my 2 brothers moved out, so that my mother wouldn't have to no longer support us.
Oh, it was
We
all
moved
of
out
you.
and got the 3 of us. Yeah, the 3 of us got a home together. We rented a house,
That's
and we
kinda
got
cool.
yeah, and we had a big house there where we could play all the music we wanted to play, and
Yeah.
we were all working. 2 of us were working on the same job at the same place, and there was no Worldwide Church of God stuff going on at all in that house. It was a very worldly house.
I'm going to say there was a lot of other things going on at that house with you and your 2
Kegger
brothers.
parties every Friday night, and playing music, and Yeah,
Brilliant.
it was some good times. So I would say me and both of my brothers kind of went that way all together at the same time, right? Shortly after my 17th birthday.
Mhm.
And we lived together in that house for a year until right after my 18th birthday when I took off to Florida. My sister lived with my mother if I recall until she got married. And she married a believer.
Of
And
WCG
Surprise.
or another church
Worldwide Church of God.
worldwide. Okay.
Yeah.
They were
So
very
this was
serious about that, as I understand
Yeah.
it, as far as like you have to marry someone in the church.
yeah. And so she married a believer from the Worldwide Church of God. And my brother-in-law, they're still together. They have a strong marriage. They're a great couple. He's a great guy. And but they're both of them fully entrenched in in the same beliefs that they've had all along. So she was with my mother until she married, as I recall, and then moved out to be with my brother to live with my brother-in-law. They have 7 kids, and all 7 kids were uh, all 7 kids were homeschooled, so they were not exposed to other kids outside of
Mhm.
this belief. And I bring this up because it's interesting what you said about they were really serious about dating within the religion. Well, um, the same thing happened with my nieces and nephews. Um, and by that time, by the time they started getting old enough to date and stuff, the Worldwide Church of God had become in the past for them, and it was sort of like home fellowship sort of thing. So their options were small. I mean, you have
No kidding.
fellowships of like 40 people and stuff, and they did go out to like
Take
different.
your pick.
I guess there's these Messianic Jew. I don't know what name they give it, but essentially that would have different meetings or camps and stuff like that. So they would get a little wider circles, exposed to wider circles, but
Genetic
not that much
diversity.
wider. And they were
Right.
all the same beliefs.
Hmm.
Okay.
And
Right.
they all were homeschooled all the way through high school. And they weren't allowed to date without a chaperone. And for them, dating was supposed to be with the intent of looking to marriage. So
For
you
sure.
didn't date just for fun. So they were really fully indoctrinated. And so you've got 7 kids that went very disparate ways there as well.
Oh, that's 7 kids in a more modern time. This is 7
Yes.
kids in the 90s?
A generation later.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
David, do you know the age brackets? Like, how old's the youngest? How old's the oldest?
My sister's youngest is just turned 17 or 18.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
I think 17 or 18. And my oldest nephew is, I think he's like 33 or something like that.
Okay. That puts
Okay.
perspective.
Yeah.
So really now they're just barely all adults, so we'll know more now about their
Well,
path.
y- yeah, I mean, well, my nephew, like I said, he's in his early 30s or mid 30s almost. And he has not been involved with that whole belief system. Well, I guess since he really came out of the closet and embraced his sexual orientation.
Gotcha.
Good for
And
you.
Whoa.
that's interesting too, because they were all raised that homosexuality is an abomination and all that.
Of course.
Right.
And so my oldest nephew, he's gay, and one of my nieces, she's a lesbian, and both of them have broken away from that belief system completely.
Good.
The other 5 are still pretty much all fully into the belief system.
That's interesting
Really?
that the firstborn child, the one who is usually the most indoctrinated, is the one that was managed to break away from it.
I
Hmm.
mean,
Well,
being
he's the
queer
most
is
gay
a
too, though. So
yeah. I know. I was like, I don't know. If
Yeah.
you're
yeah,
queer, you're not
uh,
really
uh,
accepted in some of those
yeah,
spaces.
Well, right. Well,
yeah. He's really he's very active in the queer community. So
good.
Cool.
for him, that's probably become his his religion.
So
But
has you mentioned your family was really close. The fact that
yes,
your sister has two queer kiddos, um, how has that affected the relationship?
not well.
Okay. I was afraid of that.
Yeah,
Like all the way to not well, like not speaking.
not my oldest nephew.
Okay.
There seems to be this thing where the churches are just that much harder on men who are homosexuals than women. It's like almost like women kind of get a little bit more of a free pass. Like, oh, you're a lesbian, you're okay. You're a gay guy, oh no, that's really not okay. Like
Well,
I,
the way that impacted people in the Worldwide Church of God, and when I was going to church and stuff, I never knew a single gay person. Or
yeah,
maybe I
same,
did. I just didn't know that they were gay.
right.
Nobody was out of the closet. Nobody. Whereas it's probably a different environment with my sister's kids because they do the home fellowship and stuff. So
Yeah.
it's
Right.
somewhat different, probably.
Well, and
And
I
I never
noticed
went to
with
any of their home fellowships or anything like that. So I'm not entirely sure how different that is from the Worldwide Church of God or how much it is the same. The only thing I know for sure is it's essentially the same belief system.
right. I
Right.
guess it's making me think about your sister's kiddos too, and how, I mean, it sounds like well, I know you went to public school, whereas her kids,
Yes.
they were home church, which was smaller than the worldwide church you went to,
Hmm.
and without that public school
And
experience.
homeschooled.
So, right. So it's just telling me right away, I'm thinking, okay, well, it's a whole lot easier probably to keep kids who grew up that way indoctrinated, I would think, don't let them see out. But
Yeah, and me and my siblings, we were all in public schools, my
okay.
siblings and I.
Mhm.
So, yeah.
David, at any point over the years, did anyone within your immediate family or any of your nieces or nephews, did they ever veer off into like this more like mainstream Christian churches,
Good
like
question.
Assemblies of God or evangelical? Because Pat and I
Well,
both found ourselves in evangelicalism for a while, but then we
my,
got our way out. But did anyone go that route in your family?
my oldest brother, before I said about 15 years ago, he went back to this belief system. He did dabble some with born again Christian
Okay.
Okay.
religions around, but it was more dabbling. And he's a musician, and they have all those well, like he liked the Christian rock, and they had the bands at all the um, born again Christian services and stuff. And so
Yeah.
I don't know if that had something to do with it, but he did dabble a bit with that.
Yeah.
And but my middle brother, I mean, like I said, he broke away about the same age that I did, and in fact, I'm sure that he had convinced himself that he was atheist
Oh,
at a very young, like probably by the time he was in his early 20s, or by
Mhm.
the time he'd hit 20 years old, he was, I'm sure, certain that he didn't believe any of that Worldwide Church of God stuff.
Yeah. Well, in the worldwide Church of God, it's very hard to even admit to yourself that you're an atheist. For one, somebody like Herbert W. Armstrong, he would put the word atheist in the same sentence as pedophile. No joke. Like, of course, you get that ingrained in your mind at a young age, of like bestiality, pedophilia, atheism. Like they're all the same things.
jeez.
Yeah, that's how he did it. That's quite the mind fuckery. So yeah, the term atheism, I just looked at as an evil term for a long time, even though I was one and didn't know it. So,
Yeah, I mean, I don't ever remember that until the age of 17 while I was going to the church. I don't ever remember even any talk about the word atheism at all.
Hmm.
I didn't know anybody who claimed to be an atheist. I mean, I didn't even really understand the concept probably
Right.
because I
Right.
was so fully indoctrinated that there was a God and
Right.
that's it. And
Right.
and even outside of the church, it wasn't that these people didn't believe in God, is that they had different beliefs in God.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
to me, the outside world wasn't atheist. It was they were all God believers too, but they had it all wrong.
Right.
So true. That is so true. Wow.
Yeah, atheist
That's
was like this other thing that like was, yeah, that's
like
fascinating to think
pagans
about
or
it that way.
Satan worshippers somehow. Somehow that all fell into the same category. Yeah. It's just that we were the ones with the truth and everyone else didn't have it. Yeah, you're so right, David. That's kind of the way I saw it too for a long time.
But now you guys have a brother who's still a believer, right?
Well, how
He's
he calls his belief is questionable, I guess, but he seems to do things here and there that were the do's and don'ts of the church. But as far as like the belief, I just can't tell that it's there. You know, like he won't do Christmas. He'll say he can't work on the Sabbath and won't eat pork.
Okay,
he says that, but I've seen him eat pork, so yeah.
it's
He
good.
lets it
I
slide.
love pork.
Bacon, yes.
Bacon.
Yeah, lobster. Can't believe all that lobster I missed out on as a
You
kid.
know, I know. I know.
I
When it
haven't
comes
gone
to
for lobster yet. I should try it.
Oh, it's
have you even
delicious.
eaten it,
Oh,
I've actually met quite a few WCG people at this point that are like, pork, ugh." Like I don't think they're against it like religiously. It's just they weren't used to it, and so it's like the flavor is still like not what they're into, you know?
well, my oldest brother, he claims it gets him sick every time he eats it.
Oh,
Some
He says,
people
"Oh,
say
it's a
that,
foul meat. Every time I eat it, I've gotten sick." And I don't know.
yeah.
I eat it a lot, and it doesn't get me sick. I love it.
it's handy that his experience comports with his current belief system, huh?
That is
Yeah,
handy, isn't it? Yeah.
but he's only eaten pork a few times. Even during those
Sure.
years when he
Oh,
wasn't involved, he wasn't a pork eater.
sure.
I
I
mean,
Not
mean,
too
it's
people
a
much.
are,
fatty. It's fatty. I could see it not agreeing with you if you hadn't really had it.
but
I
even
don't know.
vegetarians, vegans, if they all of a sudden eat pork, pepperoni, and pizza, yeah, they're gonna fucking puke probably. Seen it happen.
It's true. Okay, well, we're gonna get ourselves off on a food tangent because it's just so fun. but but yeah, getting back to the tale of your family, I guess I think that covers it, right? You've shared the directions everyone in your family has gone.
Yeah, I mean, my the middle brother, the middle boy, I should say, not my oldest brother, but my other brother. He's older, but he's not the oldest. He's kind of been in the same path as me. And as I was just saying, he kind of probably realized where he was at even younger than I did. And
Sure.
so, and he's completely atheist. He doesn't buy into any of that stuff at all.
Gotcha. And
Mhm.
are you fairly close with that brother?
Yes,
Okay. And does he
I
live
am.
near you?
I'm real close with both of my brothers. Yeah, they
Oh,
both live
good.
close. My one brother lives like 10 miles away. The other one lives like 30 miles away. And but now here's an interesting thing. Um, my older brother, he celebrates Christmas, but he celebrates it in a secular manner. You
Oh,
know,
sure.
not as a believer that it was the birth of Christ or anything like that. Um, I don't think he celebrates Easter, but he celebrates Christmas
Sure.
secularly, and I don't.
Oh, you don't?
Yes, I mean, like you, I was raised through my entire childhood never celebrating Christmas and never celebrating birthdays. I never had a birthday party or
Hmm.
got gifts or anything. And so since then, um, I've never celebrated Christmas, and I don't care about my birthday. I never made an issue about my birthday, and I think I might have had somebody have a party on my birthday a couple of times, but I don't really care about my birthday, and I've never celebrated Christmas because I just wasn't. I think there's a lot of socialization to that, you know.
Yeah.
And
Get
one
that.
time, I had a girlfriend that I was living with one time, and she came from a family that was very, very much into Christmas. It was a
Mhm.
big thing, and I was living with her for a few years. And one time we decided to do the whole Christmas thing, and it was, I mean, it was terrible. I mean, more so for her than for me, because for her it was all along it was like, oh, I've got to get so and so a gift that's at least this good, and this person has to get, I've got to get them this, and it's got to be that good, and it was stressing out for 2 solid months of what they have to do to prepare for Christmas, and who has to get this, and who has to get that, and can I even afford it, and on and on and on. And then one day of this, happy Christmas. And after that experience, I was like, oh no, that's not for me.
Mhm.
All that it was all that get mentality really soured you
Yeah.
on the day,
Yeah,
huh?
materialism was crazy.
I
Give
agree with
not
you. It's so funny how, as much as I would rail against Armstrong, when he called that out, I know it was because he wanted the Christmas money instead. But like, he's not wrong at how like
Yeah.
unnecessary and kind of ridiculous it is that we do it that way.
Yeah. No, I
But for us,
completely
um,
resonate.
in the 60s and the early 70s, the Feast of Tabernacles was our Christmas. We did get
Yes.
gifts on the Feast of Tabernacles. And I have wonderful memories of the Feast of Tabernacles and great times, and all my siblings as well. And it was great because we just get back into school and we get settled into school, and then suddenly we'd leave school for a week, and all the other, because we were, like I said, in public school, so all the other school kids and stuff, they had to be in class for the week, and we got to take off and leave. So that was our Christmas. I have really fond memories of the Feast of
Like the
Tabernacles.
one way that we had the upper hand over others. Like, yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
finally our turn.
Well, so here's a funny thing about that, even related to our topic. Like, I feel like we've talked to lots of cult kids who see that getting out of school early on in the school year like that as a negative. They think it made them look weird to the other kids and all these things. So it's like,
True.
it's so interesting if we're talking about the ultimate outcomes of where these kids land in their spiritual life afterward. Isn't that worth looking at too? That, like, right in the midst of it, kids are doing the exact same thing, going to the Feast of Tabernacles and having very different takes on what that means for them, right? Because I think I took a little bit more of the, oh, well, I'm elect and I know the truth and I'm
Yeah.
special. So look at me, I get to go for a week. And it's been a surprise to me to realize how many other kids were like, that made every kid look at me like I was the weirdo. But that could be a location thing, right? Like we were in California where there was lots of different faiths, lots of different races, lots of different everybody doing all different things. And so kind of nobody gave a shit. But I think of, where we moved to later, which was rural Wisconsin. And had we done it in that context, I can't help but wonder if we would have been looked at as weird, right? Because conformity is so much more important when there's a lack of diversity, and so maybe that plays into it too, right? Like I knew going into this topic, we weren't going to be like, well, here's the reason that it sends people to atheism or keeps them in the church. But I gotta think that, your city, the countryside you live in, whatever, your community, even if you're pretty entrenched in the church, I gotta think the community affects you somewhat.
Does.
Either your lack of access to it or how it is when you are a part of it.
I'm sure it does. But I think there's an interesting dynamic that went on in my family.
Okay.
I think there may have been some of that where people looked at us a little strange. Other people looked at us a little strange, but I may have been oblivious to that.
Okay.
I don't remember ever even noticing that. But on the other hand, it probably did go on. And then my older brother, he's much more sensitive to stuff like that. And he may have picked up on that. And that might have been one of the things that drove him away from the church so young.
I seem to remember you having a lot of beneficial things out of the church, such as girls, for example. The girls paid attention to you within the church, but the ones at school didn't seem to want anything to do with you. Am I wrong in that, David? Or are you blushing, honey? Oh,
yeah, that's true.
so adorable.
Isn't it a wonder, given that story, because I have thought about that story over the months too, it is a wonder that you didn't decide to stay in the church. I mean, that's where the getting was good, right?
The boobies were coming out. Yeah.
Well, I mean, that was when I was still going to high school and stuff.
Okay.
So obviously, perhaps some of the school kids did kind of look at me a little differently because there wasn't a single girl in high school who had any interest in me. So I never went to any one of the proms or any of that. But like you're saying, there was a girl in the church, and her and I were hooking up, and she was an older girl too. She was a couple of years older than me. So
well, damn, David. All right. Mm-hmm. We see how you rolled.
So I had that going on but as soon as I stopped going to church and I moved out with my brothers and we'd have kegger parties and stuff like that, I was exposed to plenty of women where I didn't need that to keep me in the church.
There you go.
Noted.
But at least you got some benefit out of the church. That's excellent.
And then as soon as I turned 18, I left the state altogether and went to Florida, which was a real playground. I loved Florida.
Really?
It's so much better than California. Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know. That's an interesting dynamic. My brother was very sensitive to stuff like that.
Fascinating. Right.
And now here's another interesting thing too, is I'm a very rational thinker and I'm a skeptic.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And my older brother is just like that as well. He's a very rational thinker, and he can spot a fallacy a mile away. Whereas not so much with my oldest brother or my sister.
That's interesting.
Because to this day I see their fallacious thinking all the time.
Right.
And also education. Me and my older brother both got a college education. And not Ambassador College, you know what I mean? In the state university system. And
that makes a huge difference.
And neither my oldest brother nor my sister have a higher education. They're both high school graduates.
Okay.
There's often there.
I think if we looked that one up, I'm going to assume that's probably our strongest link. Like if we're gonna pull data, I feel like the education piece has got to be the number one thing.
Wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I feel like this is why as a kid I felt like the church had something against going to college. Like, and I've heard this in evangelical spaces also, the idea of not wanting to send their kids to higher education because they kept coming back liberal, Well,
so my nephew, like I said, he was homeschooled all the way up, all the way through high school. And then, and my nephew is a brilliant guy. I mean, he's super intelligent, super smart guy. And also probably more rational and stuff. And then he suddenly went into college, into the state university system. And he's like completely different world to him. And I'm sure it just completely opened up his mind,
right.
And I remember him talking about how big of an impact and how much, he would look back on his homeschooling and think how his education was actually stunted.
Right.
By being homeschooled once he made it into the university system. And so he's now atheist as well, and he's got a higher education. He's got a bachelor degree. And neither of neither of my believer siblings have a higher education.
Okay.
And so,
Well,
they're a lot of the education, I mean, they're self-learned, they're smart people,
of
and,
course.
and
Of
so they're
course.
self-educated and stuff. But when you self-educated, um, you're educating yourself from the stuff that down the silos that you know of and have been
There it
exposed to.
is.
Yeah.
Exactly. Great point.
You're
What a
educated in
good point.
silos.
Right. Oh, well, right. I mean, this gets to just like straight up all of the environmental factors that go into this idea of where people land, right? It's that we were talking city versus country, but right, you're looking at education and media and who they have available to talk to, right? So it's like, is that changing now with TikTok at everybody's fingertips? That they can talk to anybody about any worldview at any
Mhm.
time,
Yeah,
right?
and I know people who are believers, and their education is YouTube,
Yeah.
I,
and
I will
there's
I
a lot
will
of good
weirdly,
education on YouTube, but there's
yeah,
algorithms that decide
yes.
what education you do see on YouTube.
Bias. Yeah.
True. If you're letting it just tell you what to watch, absolutely, it's like that. But
Wow.
I will stand up for YouTube a little bit because as someone coming out of belief, and then I kind of like, well, I was out of belief for probably 10 years before I was like, maybe I should make sure I know what the world is really like. And so I actually used some really good content on YouTube. There was like put out by PBS Digital Studios, these crash course series where
Hmm.
you can do like, all of these, and it's quality. Like I checked,
Eons
right?
and stuff like that.
Eons. I love Eons, David.
Hmm.
That's the best. Yeah, all the Crash Course series. So yeah, I lived in there for probably 3, 4 years, like all of my, while I'm at home doing life, doing dishes, whatever, like I'd always be watching something like that and just learning, learning, learning. I got all the way to like the digital studios on space time and I was like, yeah, okay. I tried. I cannot wrap my brain around space time and all of this stuff and dark energy and all of that. So, like, maybe I've learned enough. I know that stuff exists?
I think like atheist skeptics, there is this drive for learning. Like we want to learn as much as possible. And we will go outside of our boundaries and be like, oh, well, I don't know much about this, so I want to learn about it. Whereas I feel like within the religious space, it's very cognitive bias. Like they will go looking for things to confirm what they already believe. So is that
Confirmation
really
bias, yeah.
Exactly.
learning? Is it
Yeah.
really learning? Yeah, or they're just
Hmm.
regurgitating what they know and then they're trying to prove themselves.
And it's got a lot to do with how big your world is,
Well, right.
your worldview.
Yes.
Because just yesterday I was talking to a guy, and he was obviously a Christian dude because he's talking about how blessed he was to have another day above ground, so to speak, and all that, and he can redeem himself with the Lord and whatever. And I said, yeah, the way I look at it is, this is an immense universe, and of all the things in this immense universe, almost none of it, an infinitesimal part of it, has consciousness.
Mm,
And I get to have another day of consciousness right
yeah.
now.
Mm.
Yeah.
So I'm going to embrace that, because almost nothing in this universe has consciousness.
Yes. At least in a way we can
And
understand that it
and
exists.
so,
Yeah.
I have this big view of the world, like this huge, immense universe that it's so immense that we're just a tiny speck in it. I mean, not even. And how could we even really matter? Like the world doesn't center around humans. and
Right.
and then the believers, they close in, they bring their worldview in tighter and tighter.
You're so right. You're
And
so right. Mm.
so for example, my sister and my mother and my brother are all young earth creationists. They believe the earth is the universe is less than 10,000 years old. So that's a very, very small view.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that makes a big difference
Mhm.
on how
I
big
think
your
it
view
does
is.
too. I think you're not wrong, and I think it's still pointing us toward the education piece. or exposure, maybe not to say education, because I think that we start
Yeah.
to sound like assholes, right? Like,
Well, there's
to your point, like they're
self-education though. I
clearly,
mean,
yeah, of course.
absolutely.
self-directed education.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like
And so it's
travel around the world is education. Yeah.
Yeah.
But even what you're exposed to, and as you educate yourself and stuff, you can be exposed to a big picture, or you can be keep yourself exposed to a small picture.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think that makes a big difference.
And so maybe we're actually choosing that. So maybe to say that it's education that makes the difference doesn't make sense, but it's like something even before that, that are you going to be someone who's going to choose to let these new experiences and new information pieces like make it in,
Right.
you know? And so maybe, maybe we got to go deeper than just what education is available, because you're totally right, David. People have to be in a place of being ready to receive it.
Yeah, some people go looking to discredit certain things. You know, they don't want to
Oh, yes.
change their worldview. But I think it's important we look at all of that as well. That's why I like watching atheist debates on YouTube. Matt Dillahunty, Seth Andrews, Forrest Valkai. Yeah, puts it into perspective for me. I want to hear things from the other side. I'll even watch Fox News on occasion because I want to know what's being said. Yeah, I feel like disgusting after I watch it, and I get that's what happens, but I want to be able to take, you know, what they're saying as well and be like, yay or nay? Like, do they have some points here or don't they? You know, I've
had discussions with my siblings about evolution and God and stuff like that. And so, for example, when we talk about evolution, when they'll bring outside sources into the discussion, they'll look for sources that discredit evolution.
Yes.
And that's what they'll bring into the discussion. And if you don't ever look at stuff that shows evolution and how it's not even a hypothesis anymore. It's we've observed it. We observe it happening. It's not a sort of, it's not really a thing for discussion whether or not it happens or not. I mean, we observe it. It's a known fact.
I guess my question is, what evidence actually disproves evolution? I'm kind of curious what that is.
I've seen a lot of it. I mean, if it's the only thing you see, it does seem to disprove evolution. If it's the only thing you see.
Right. And to add on to what you're saying there, David, I'm aware of the fact that the organizations out there that promote young earth creationism, they're very good at what they do. So what they'll do is they'll talk about their idea and they'll acknowledge some of the scientific things that are happening that prove it, but they'll kind of like give it a different name. They won't call it the mainstream scientific name. They'll call it something else and then use that term in all of their creationist friends' content. And so that the real term for the real science is not even available to look up for the people who are already looking at creationist stuff. All they're going to find when they look up the terms they find is other creationist things because they've made up new words. You know what I'm saying?
And they cherry pick.
Of course. Yeah.
Wonder how all that plays into siblings. That whole sibling issue.
Right,
or the way,
almost,
not maybe more so, not so much whether you're siblings, but how similarly you're raised and exposed.
Right, because it's the exposure.
But we could, Patty, you and I could say, oh, we were raised in exactly the same way, but we really weren't. I think you were far more indoctrinated than I was. Somehow I felt like they just gave you the information and somehow they expected either you to teach me or for it to just kind of trickle down and then I would understand at that point. But I really shut my mind off to a lot of it. And I didn't believe in all this, but I kept my mouth shut, you know?
Right.
Where does your brother fit in terms of age?
So Patty's the oldest, I'm the second oldest, and then we have a little brother, and then we have a little sister. For the most part, all of us are about 2 years apart. The youngest one is 4 years younger. We have, and we're all in different states. So Patty's in Oregon, I'm in Central Illinois. Our brother's down in Texas, and then our little sister's over in South Carolina. We're about as spread out as we can get. But our brother went the route of going a tad more on the, like I'm going to follow some rules and I'm more racist and misogynistic. Like he got those elements of the church, and our little sister
Mhm.
is special needs, so she just kind of going day to day and just doing what she's told. Yeah.
Interesting.
Meanwhile, Patty and I went to college, got degrees. We pursued careers and figured out who we were, and we got out into the world. Yeah.
Yeah. That's the size of the world you're exposed to again.
Mm-hmm.
That keeps
I think
coming
that's
up,
what we
doesn't
keep
it?
coming back to, huh?
Uh-huh. We might be, maybe we can call it by the end of this conversation and be like, that's it. We decided.
We'll have to throw out the whole sibling theory altogether, huh?
Oh, the
Just
birth order
travel
thing.
far and wide.
I mean,
Yeah,
I don't, the thing, well, okay, we cannot just say this is just one thing, obviously,
No.
but it has to be something about the exposure, because even the birth order stuff, David, I think we could make a case for that being linked to the idea of exposure, right? Because countless families, I hear stories of like the older kids get taken all kinds of places with the dad, or they do get, they get to do all these things. But once there's 5, 6, 7 kids in the house, they're not doing all that stuff anymore. And so the exposure for the younger kids might actually change too. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, true. And when you're the oldest kid, there's a period of time when you're on your own. You don't,
True.
and even as you get older as kids, you're still a few years older than the others, so you have different circles of friends and stuff. Whereas
Right.
the younger siblings, they are more involved with their other siblings, and they become tighter. You get a tighter circle.
I could see that too. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and at the same time, I could see in some families, the parents are very hands-on and doing everything with and for the older kids. And then they just kind of get tired by the time the younger kids are coming up and they're like, whatever. And the younger kids, the baby of the family goes off and causes all kinds of trouble because they've just been left to their own devices. And that
Or they
would
let the
be
older
more
sibling help
exposure.
raise the younger siblings.
Right.
Exactly. Patty, I remember you always hating that. You're saying, oh, I was the oldest and they just expected you to set an example for the younger ones.
Yes.
I mean, you hated that, didn't you? Yeah.
Well, I had to be indoctrinated then, because if they were expecting me to be the like shining example for all the other kids so that they didn't have to actually teach the other kids, like of course they put a lot of effort in. But all of that is still exposure, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
You're still the shining example, Patty.
Why, thank you, David. I will take that. I don't know of what anymore, but I'll still take it.
It doesn't have to be your younger siblings, Pats, but in a way, I always kind of looked up to you as a mother figure anyway.
No.
Yeah. You were there for me when my own mother was
Hearts
not.
for Nancy, hearts for David too.
Well, I give you hearts too, but my hands don't work too well. So.
Oh, you're
darn,
fine, David. You're fine.
Actually, I don't know. I think I somehow have this special add-on that lets me do this. I haven't found many people that can do this. I know. I'm just magic. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Oh, so it's not technology; it's magic. All right.
See, I could get behind technology being magic, but I realize that's a word problem, and I use words for their feeling, not for their definition, and it gets me in trouble. So
I think we all do.
Yeah.
If you take all the technology that we take for granted now and set up to somebody 200 years ago, it would be magic.
Absolutely. We would be the best wizards around.
Yeah.
Well, I'm quite pleased, I would say, with where we landed in this conversation. I feel very like we dug in and got it. We didn't go all psychological and like pull out journals and studies necessarily, but
And Freud.
And Freud.
Not a single mention of Freud until now.
That's true. Yeah, that could have gone places, couldn't it? All right. Well, if you ever have another deep dive topic that you want to go all the way to psychology and Freud and stuff, you just let me know. We'll do the research there, David.
Will do.
Yeah. I did want to talk a little bit about, if you guys are down for it, I want to talk a little bit about why members of religions of high control or cults like the one we were raised in, somehow when people get away from that, they say, oh, they finally figured out this is bullshit, but somehow they still find themselves in other religions, like prettier evangelical churches like you and I did, Pats. I really want to get down to, I guess, the psychology of that.
I mean, it's an interesting
Or
point
back
to bring
into
up.
the first religion like my brother did.
Right.
Yeah, back the exact same one. Why get away from it and then all
After
of a sudden, after exploring,
Right.
I can only imagine, David, that somehow the world and the humans in it were just not satisfying to them, or maybe they didn't really like this world. It didn't suit them, and maybe they just liked their small space and they felt more comfortable there, just having people tell them about the world and tell them what to do. Maybe I'm wording that wrong, but
I've never had the topic conversation like that, so I don't know either.
Huh. Yeah, because I find it interesting, David, that in your family there really wasn't that middle ground, other than I think you said one brother kind of did some mainstream Christian-y stuff for a while. But we actually see it over and over.
But that was
How
just
many?
dabbling.
Right.
That
Yeah,
was
There
just
wasn't
checking it
much middle
out.
ground.
Right. So
but I
it's
don't
interesting,
know.
right? Because there's been all of these other WCG people we've come in contact with that are either still evangelical or that was their path out to atheism. So it's so
Right.
interesting to realize, like, and right, so that's like a whole other branch, right? Because David, you brought to the table, stayed in it or really didn't stay in it. So yeah, I don't know. I tend to think that
All the
most
way
of
in or
our
all the way out.
right,
Right.
but isn't that very WCG, right? Or
That's
very
probably got more to do with
biblical?
It is.
the cult
Hmm.
sort of aspect of it, the cultish aspect.
No,
You're
I
in or you're out.
the moment I
Right.
got away from it,
Yes.
I hated it so much. It's the moment I got away from all that, I never in my life wanted to go back. I never thought about it. I hated every second of it. So I can only imagine that there are people out there that legit just love going to church, and maybe it's just the community aspect, or they really just can't navigate this world on their own and they need the church to guide them. I don't know.
And yet you ladies have heard me talk about how much I enjoyed a lot of the Worldwide Church of God
You
stuff.
did. Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know.
have a very
I'm still
positive view
baffled
of a
by
lot
it.
of it.
It's so interesting to me, David. I agree. You have such a positive view of it and still walked away.
But I
yeah.
would add too that, like, was that really the church elements of it, David, or was that you just like? Of course, we all like aspects of Feast of
Ooh.
Yeah, that's a good
Tabernacles.
point.
I liked
That's a good
going
point.
to, yeah, I liked going to. Okay, Wisconsin Dells is where Patty and I went for the feast once we were in Wisconsin, and yeah,
Yeah.
I did have fun. Not sitting 2,
course.
3, 4 hours in fucking church. But I had fun playing mini golf and going on the go-karts. That was the fun part.
Yeah.
So
Well, it
Some
was
of the stuff,
vacation.
some of the stuff not so
Yeah.
much. Like I was definitely relating to your podcast about the Day of Atonement.
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
That part was brutal.
So brutal. Oh,
So I
did
guess
you drink the shower water?
Oh gosh.
I don't remember doing that, but I remember we weren't supposed to even drink water. And so like you brush your teeth and you'd spit the water out. And
Yeah.
but so I guess it was a mixed bag for me. Some of it I really have positive memories about, and some of it not so much.
Yeah.
At least the Day of Atonement on the not so much side.
Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
think I have more of a positive view of it than you ladies have seemed to expressed.
Of
Yeah,
course.
I think so.
You were
I
also
would that was what I was gonna say.
I was also what?
a man in the church, and we were few
Well,
women.
yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But I would also contend, like, can we do all these things without the religious aspect of it?
Ooh.
You know, all the things that
what
you
things?
enjoyed about the church, all the fun you had
Yeah,
hanging
the
out
things
with
that I
people.
enjoyed, they
Yeah.
didn't require the religious part.
And the community, did you need the religious aspect of it at all? But my guess is you didn't. You know,
No.
those are Mm-hmm.
Do you
No, that
don't
was
feel
all just
upset at
indoctrination.
any way in being taught things that weren't true?
No, because you're taught things that aren't true even outside of the Worldwide Church of God.
Okay, that's fair.
you can get exposed to things that aren't true in many, many places.
All right.
It just never had
And
a hold on you, I think. Yeah.
the Worldwide Church of God doesn't have a corner on that market,
True enough. True enough. Indeed. Yeah, I guess that question came up for me just because, I think people who go to like your standard Lutheran church on the corner or whatever, I don't know that they would walk away from that experience with this, like the same thing that we were taught of this is truth, and how important that truthness of it. But that also could be our dad. Our dad was all about truth.
An interesting thing with my father, I remember when I was a kid and we were in the church and we would have like these, a lot of the families would get together and stuff. And I remember we'd have some get togethers. There was one black family in our church. And
Yeah.
I remember that they'd be invited to our, when we have these get togethers with people from the church and stuff like that. And they were completely accepted and stuff like that. And through my entire childhood and even into adulthood, I never once heard my father make any kind of racist comment or anything like that. Had no inkling of any kind of racism with him. And I discovered shortly before he died, like I was probably 40 years old, shortly before he died, when I suddenly discovered that my dad was racist. And it was like jaw-dropping to me. It's like, how did I go through 40 years of my life without ever having been exposed to him expressing any kind of racist comments, and then finding out right at the end that he was quite racist?
Oh, that's kind of sad. But I have to tell you,
will.
you are not alone in that experience.
Nope.
David, same. We were in California, a little more north of you, San Jose, but it was very diverse. It was the 80s. It was they had to be accepting, tolerance, whatever. Like that was already happening. And I assumed that's why I didn't hear anything, but I never heard anything that I remember. But I do remember, like it had to have been there somehow, like in the air. I don't know. Because I remember a black boy down the street from me asked if I wanted to come play. I feel terrible about this. Asked if I wanted to come play at his house. And I remember saying, I don't think my mom would want me to. And I think at the time I was thinking boy, and that was the problem. And that might be more what I was thinking. But then as I said it, I was like, is it because he's black? And like, I think I was even like, not sure in that moment for myself why I was saying it, why I thought that about my mom. You know what I mean? And then it was like once they were moved on to one of the offshoots, it was like all the guardrails came off. And she started watching, I don't know, Fox News or something too. And it got bad. It has gotten bad to where Nancy having a husband with brown skin, some really terrible comments have been made.
Wow.
Like things like, oh, look out for ISIS. Like, what are you talking about? Like, he's from India. Like, it has nothing to even do with it, So it's just ignorant racism. But they were
our
very
younger
good
brother.
but they never
Patty,
said anything.
All racism is ignorant.
Well, yes. Yes, I guess. But like, I don't know what I mean of that. But like maybe ignorant of the fact that they were being racist or something. I don't know. But you're right. It is all.
Patty, is it weird that our younger brother, he married a young black woman from down south, and I feel like they were more tolerant of that than they were of me marrying an Indian man. Am I wrong in that? Or that's kind of what I got out of it, though. I felt like they had much more of a problem with me in that situation.
I guess to their credit, if they're carrying that racism, like they have kept it very close. Like they haven't been just spewing grossness, right? They've at least like known to be quiet about it. I don't know. It's hard.
The signature pursing the lips.
It's sad.
Well, yeah. Gross.
Yeah. Well,
change.
If we're talking about exposure, and we're going to say that we think exposure is one of the biggest factors involved in this big question of how siblings end up in different religious environments. I mean, that's an exposure thing too, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right? Like what your parents say or
Yeah.
subtly say
Or what they hide.
or what they hide. Sometimes to their credit, what they hide. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, in a way, we're all racist, you know. We were all raised in a country that's, you know, built on white supremacy, and it's baked into business policies, government policies, and
Misogyny.
and misogyny. Thank
Misogyny,
you.
big one,
Yeah,
yeah.
I mean, these are
But those
things
are
where,
both things that were much deeper, I think, in the Worldwide Church of God than elsewhere.
yeah. And in some ways, I felt like the church felt entitled to be okay with it.
Because Herbert W. Armstrong was okay with it.
Yeah, like if it was in the Bible, even if it made Yahweh look like a terrible genocidal maniac, they're like, well, that's just God. I mean, yeah, it's good
But
then,
they
right? 'Cause
owned
it's
it.
God.
Worldwide Church of God owned it. They're like, fuck
It's
yeah,
true.
that's his character.
Yeah. Huh.
That's our Lord and Savior. Misogynistic, racist, genocidal, homicidal maniac.
Well, all good things to make a case for us no longer believing in a God, because the nature of that God can take us to some pretty dark places, it seems. All right. Well, David, we are so appreciative of you not only doing your interview with us a few months ago, but you brought this topic to us as a great item of curiosity, and we thought so too. And then you just had some really excellent stories to bring to the table about your own family. And I really appreciate you taking the time to hang with us.
Well, thank you. It was fun. And I would be interested in seeing some more input on this topic on the Discord.
Oh, yes.
Oh.
Let's get started. Yeah.
Indeed. Yeah. Well, and so let's talk about that. So anybody who is in our WCG Survivor Discord, go ahead and weigh in on this topic or write on YouTube. Anybody at all. If you come out of a church of high control or you have some insights into this, go ahead and leave a comment down below.
Yes, I want to see the comments.
Yeah. Okay. Great. That's great. Because David wants to know. We're going to try to solve this.
Obviously, it's something I've thought about because I was the one who mentioned it to you guys. So
Yes.
I do want to know.
Very good topic. Very good topic.
Yeah, so doesn't matter for Nancy and I, but for David, everybody respond to David in the comments and tell him what you thought of this episode and give him more insights about this topic because it's a good one. So. All right. Thank you so much, David.
My pleasure. All right, ladies. Bye-bye.
All right.
Bye,
Bye.
David. At least I'm not talking about my labia this time.
You can talk about labia.